All the good stuff, throwaway account, names have been changed, intentionally vague details. Also, this story happened to me 10 plus years ago. This is a story that to this day I've only told parts of to a handful of people. However, enough time has passed that I feel it would do me some good to get the full story off my chest. Also, sorry about the wall of text. It looks like I've spilled the tea and kettle. TLDR, back in the early 2010s, I then 17M received, and subsequently did not accept, sexual advances from a then early 30s married, pregnant teacher's assistant. I then spent the rest of the school year diffusing the situation. It was my senior year of high school in a very small rural town. When I say small, I mean that the entire high school consisted of less than 50 students. Julie was the school's new computer lab tech, not sure of actual job title. She was in charge of maintaining the school's computers. Whenever we had a class that we needed to use the computers for, she would help the teacher to monitor us students and make sure no one was playing flash games or checking social media, etc. Julie had a very flirtatious vibe. She would regularly have playful conversations with all us students. This was not sexual by any means, more so teasing and poking fun. She acted more like a fellow student with us than a superior. In general, this made lots of students, myself included, enjoy our classes with her as she wasn't as strict and classes weren't boring. Julie was also a mother of two. Her and her husband, let's call him Dave, moved to town where she found this job, and her husband worked in a manual/skilled laborer job. Julie became pregnant shortly into the school year and began showing by the time second semester came around. Little did I know that that was around the time her opinion of me started to change. Hindsight tells me that the catalyst for Julie's newfound lust was probably during a gender swap day the school had during one of the regular spirit weeks they would put on. The premise of this day was for guys to show up dressed as girls and vice versa. I know, very gender binary. I didn't dress any different, but a few did. Julie showed up that day with several very feminine costumes that she had think sexy Halloween costume type of clothing. During breaks, she was bugging the male students to show some spirit and put them on. Most of the guys were too cool/embarrassed to oblige. I, however, thought that it would at least get a laugh out of Sophie, a good friend. So I grabbed the skimpiest top and went to the change room. I came out in a very tight, pink, sleeveless, corset-style dress with jeans underneath. I went up to George and did a "bro, can you do up my corset?" bit, and it got a couple laughs. The memory that sticks in my mind the most from that day is Julie saying something to the effect of, "Wow, you have a strong muscular back." I guess it's true what they say about giving a guy a compliment, and he will remember it for the rest of his life, because I still remember the joy that compliment gave me to this day. At that time, I was skinny like a string bean, having lost a bunch of weight due to puberty and a change in activity, so complimenting my defined back while in a tight corset truly was flattering. Anyways, I feel like this was the first comment Julie made to me that crossed a line and possibly planted a seed in her mind. However, at the time I thought nothing of it and just took it as a nice compliment. A while later, Julie began to question me about my current on-again/off-again relationship with Isabella, a fellow student. Now, even from Julie's outside perspective, it was probably very easy to see the signs of a bad relationship. Isabella would regularly string me and other guys along. Julie picked up on this, and at an opportune time when I was alone with her, she simply asked, "What's up with you guys?" When I didn't have a good answer, she said something along the lines of "You deserve better," and left it at that. From there, she would proceed to make small remarks, like passing her in the hall, she would say something like, "Hey, during chem class, I noticed Isabella flirting with Roy." My oblivious ass still didn't raise any suspicion, or think it was odd that a staff member was concerning themselves this heavily in high school dating life drama. I thought she was simply looking out for me. One day, my group of friends was in the computer lab over lunch, and Julie began complaining about having ordered takeout from the local restaurant, but having to walk all the way there and back to get it. I happened to have drove myself to school that day and thought nothing of offering to give her a ride. After all, she was pregnant, and I seen it as nothing more than a friendly favor. So we went off school property, just the two of us, I know, and got her lunch. It wasn't till the return trip when once again she brought up Isabella. I ended up opening up to her a bit about knowing that she's not right for me but not wanting to hurt her. We pulled back into the school lot as Julie was telling me that I'm too nice of a guy. I shrugged it off as she turned to me while opening the door and said, "You know, nice guys always finish last." I can't say for certain what it was about how she said that, but there was a certain smolder in that last line. It was at this moment when I began to question the way Julie felt about me. I still didn't believe it though, because, of course, she isn't into me. I once again rationalized this interaction as just her looking out for me, which, aside from the sexual innuendo, was genuinely relationship advice that I needed to hear at the time. The next couple weeks pass as normal, aside from me making an effort to distance myself from Isabella. I guess the advice sunk in. One day, during last period, I was in the computer lab working on a paper. I was trying my best not to notice Isabella at the far side of the lab. She was sitting next to Roy with her legs across his lap, giggling, and making no effort to hide their new relationship. I had Facebook tabbed and was catching up on my timeline as any kid that wanted to fit in did at the time. I made minimal efforts to hide what I was doing, as Julie was the only one supervising at the time, and I knew she was cool about computer use. Out of nowhere, I get a FB message. It's from Julie, who I wasn't even friends with on the site. She messaged, "God, what a bitch," clearly in reference to Isabella. I remember looking over to Julie and her giving a friendly smirk. I responded simply, "Haha, yeah," thinking that would be the end of the interaction. It wasn't. She proceeded to carry on with the conversation. Not wanting to be rude, I responded, but was unsure why she was continuing on. Once school ended and I was now home, Julie's tone became very complimentary, as if to butter me up. She then asked me if I've ever watched Billy Madison. Having seen the movie, time almost came to a stop as I began to speculate what she was going to say next. She then said something in reference to the Hot for Teacher plot and how she enjoyed it. My stomach physical churned, and I instantly broke out into a cold sweat. I felt sick, I felt wrong, I felt like every molecule of my being was violently rejecting the message I had just read. At this point, it was clear to me. Julie fantasized about having sex with me. I proceeded to freak out. I wanted nothing to do with any of this. It was wrong to me on so many levels, and worst of all, I didn't know how to get out of it. Through my sheer blindness to pick up on any of the signs, I had let Julie get far too comfortable and get the wrong idea. I was scared to turn her down, as I didn't know how she'd handle the rejection. Would she not take no as an answer? Would she get scared that I would tell someone and try to get ahead of it by telling Dave, her husband, that I made a move on her? Would she force herself on me to try and keep me from talking? I just didn't know. I felt powerless to stop this, as I felt that she was the adult here and it would be her word against mine. I couldn't tell anyone else either. If this ever got out, I was sure that cops would get involved and possibly the news. I didn't want any of that attention. Not to mention, I began to get increasingly scared about Dave. He gave off the vibe of the type of guy that would have no problem resorting to violence upon hearing about his unfaithful wife. Also, I didn't want to break up a family. What would that do to the kids? I needed a plan of how to best dodge all these bullets while also protecting myself. I knew that in case things did go bad, what I needed was concrete evidence. While the meaning behind Julie's message was clear to me, she didn't outright admit to her intentions. It made me sick to think about. but I knew I had to keep this conversation going until she said something clearly explicit. I began to respond using as few words as I could, also making no comment to say that I agreed or consented. She just kept going, eventually saying something along the lines of, "I want you to be my muse," and then finally, "God, I could just jump you right now." Feeling that this was enough and not being able to handle this conversation anymore, I simply ghosted. I now had my smoking gun. For the next couple weeks, I made myself scarce. I avoided all interactions with Julie, not even making eye contact. I knew there was safety in numbers, and as long as I stayed in a group of friends, she couldn't try anything. I became very anxious about knowing what my classmates' plans were over lunch and breaks to try and keep myself surrounded. My main goal was to let her come to the realization that I wasn't interested on her own, hoping that it would lessen her urge to want to escalate. I also felt that the time might make her come to her senses and realize what she was thinking was wrong in the first place. It didn't seem to be working, as Julie tried a few times to message me again. My fear was warranted. I had a class that I took through online correspondence and so needed to use a computer. I opted to go to the computer lab in the attached elementary school. This is something that a handful of high schoolers did during periods that the elementary didn't have it booked, and I began to as well since Julie stayed in the high school lab. It was only myself and a few other classmates at the time when Julie came into the lab and began to hand out flyers for the next school event. I had my chair pushed away from the table and was slightly reclined into it. As she passed behind me, instead of placing the flyer on the table by the computer, she reached over my shoulder, placing the flyer in my lap. She then let her arm almost go limp, and she traced a finger up my chest and slightly tugged at my shirt. I felt utterly scandalized. Not only was I wrong about feeling safe around others, but she clearly wanted to keep pursuing me. I knew I couldn't avoid her at school. At this point, I was heavily considering telling my friends. If for no other reason than the fact that I just couldn't handle the stress. The moment came on a school field trip in which Julie didn't attend. I was sitting with a small circle of friends and the topic of Julie came up, and not being able to take it anymore, I told them my story. I was terrified of getting a bad reaction, of one of the guys trying to downplay it or think it was cool, or of someone else urging me that I needed to tell the authorities. The main reaction I had got was skepticism, to which I had the proof. I remember pleading with the group that this secret can't get out right before showing them the messages. I then watched as my phone got handed around, and one by one people realized I was telling the truth. For the next few days, I was on pins and needles. As you could expect, this story traveled like wildfire, and before we were even back from the field trip, the whole high school knew. I didn't know what to expect. I thought that surely someone was bound to tell their parents, but no one did. I think that everyone came to the same realization of just how nuclear this secret would be if it came out, and so it just became a group secret. From then on, it seemed like everything had changed. Any class that I had to be in the computer lab for, I'd notice my friends closer around me. Some of the guys began looking for more opportunities to chat and try flirting with Julie, while I feel that the girls in my grade kept a closer watch on her with judgmental eyes. I'm sure that this change was noticeable enough for Julie to realize what had happened, and realizing that the whole high school secretly knew, she didn't make any more advances towards me. I don't know if this is the most satisfying ending to this story, but it's how it ended nonetheless. To this day, I don't think anyone outside of my fellow alumni ever found out. Julie and Dave stayed together for a few years before divorcing over what I can only assume was his drug problem, as he's been in and out of jail for drug-related crimes ever since. Story too long story, but I hope it helps someone and it will help me to get it off my mind. Me 64 million XW 65F were together 20Y married 17. No kids, we divorced 8 years ago. We are both professionals. I have owned my own business for 35 plus Y and helped her start 6 different businesses while we were together, none of which succeeded or lasted long. She had difficulty with paperwork, which was essential for her business, and she felt she was more accomplished than she was due to lack of experience. I was previously divorced and she had never been married. I was once divorced with a daughter. My first wife accused me of cheating at the end of the marriage, which I never did. I think she was just fishing for some helpful information. She said she was going to meet up with someone who had all the dirt. I told her good, because I wanted to see what I was doing, because I sure wasn't having any fun at that point in time. She never found anything, and the supposed person with the info never showed. We started dating as she was finishing her MS degree. I paid all her school loans. We both have ADHD, which is controlled with medication. Hers is more severe and she takes several meds and I take one. She was very fun, beautiful, smart, quick to anger and histrionic, always wanting attention. I am more down to earth, easygoing, non-confrontational but not shy and a jokester at heart. I do have flaws like some procrastination, and although very manly, I am not an alpha male. I try to please but have learned to set boundaries. I was not wanting to get married a second time, but after 3 years of dating, she insisted that if we were to stay together, then we needed to be married. I didn't get a prenup, she wouldn't sign one red flag, my bad. I had owned a successful business for over 10 years by the time we met. For years we were happy and bought a house together. We had friends, although I don't have many close individual friends, and am by nature a bit of a loner and a workaholic. She had a lot of friends, but they tended to be short-term friends, red flag. It took a few dates before there was any intimacy because she wanted to go slow, but she also told me she tended to have sex quickly, red flag. And she has been cheated on before and had cheated before, big red flag. Sex was amazing for both of us. I had to be the instigator. If we were regular, it was easy. If there was any gap like a few days, then I had to romance extra and warm her up to get her going. Also, just like the rest of the relationship, 80% or more of the work was from me. She knew that I would never cheat on her and even bragged to everyone that her husband would never cheat, and even called into a radio talk show on Valentine's Day that was bashing men and stated her husband would never cheat. She was expensive due to her meds and her insurance and taste for the finer things. She also liked taking different CE classes and different seminars for new variations of her profession. They tended to be very expensive, and she almost never got a ROI with any of the businesses she started. I was starting businesses for her and maintaining them, which was expensive. They were never successful as couldn't do the paperwork which was essential in her profession. She spent 1 year at a city 100 miles away for training and a 6-month stint several states away for training, both times needing an apartment act. She would go to weekend or week-long seminars for training, sometimes close, but sometimes several states away. Most of these I don't believe she used to cheat, but I don't know. One of the last ones I paid for was in Florida, and she had to get a wax for her bathing suit, which she had never done before, red flag. I don't know if she cheated on trips, but if so, it was probably with someone she picked up. On her 50th birthday, she had a party where she said she invited some female friends to our house for a party over a weekend. I had to stay away and get a motel room because it was a girls-only party. She insisted that I stay away or she would be very angry. Maybe red flag. By about the middle of the marriage, she decided she no longer wanted to work at a job. She just wanted to stay home and garden. That was about the same time the economy went bust and making ends meet was tough. I worked long hours to support us, which made her mad because she was home all day and bored. I would come home tired and wasn't interactive enough with her. She admitted she was somewhat of a princess and liked to have things given and done for her. I did all of my laundry and a lot of my own cooking. I fixed everything around the house. I am very skilled in a lot of repair and improvement type situations. I even remodeled a glassed-in room of our house for her to use as an office. I was very patient with her as she constantly criticized me all during the remodel. She didn't believe I could do it and that it wouldn't look good when I was done. When it was done, she reluctantly said it looked great. She wanted a break at one point and wanted me to move out. I purchased a use camper that I put on the business property. I stayed in there for several weeks. One day when I went to the house to help her with something, I slipped on the ice when leaving the house and suffered a concussion. She made me stay there and took care of me. We started talking and I moved back in. With the tight economy and her not willing to work, I started being more quiet and reserved. I was working hard, yet we were falling behind on bills and she wasn't helping. Bedroom was dead for 2 years, and if I tried to initiate, she claimed she would get anxiety and shut down. We both had been to PC for years, mostly for me to get the medication I needed, and she had always gone for meds and other. She originally thought she was sexually molested as a child, but a therapist put that in her head and it never actually happened. She had told her parents for years that she believed she was molested as a baby, but she wasn't and finally admitted as much. She has 3 sisters, one a couple years older and has been in and out of a mental institutions, one a couple years younger that has had her problems holding jobs, and a third one a few years younger apparently has the mentality of a grade school-age child and lives with an older woman. The siblings all have their mental stresses. We started MC and it helped a little, but the main problems continued. Her not willing to work to help with finances and me being resentful. She started to goad me at the MC to say we needed to get divorced. I finally had enough and said we would get divorced. I am very much against divorce, but there was no other option. I realize now that I also took on blame from many of her accusations that wasn't deserved because I was being a wimp and hurting. She was very adept at turning almost anything negative into being my fault. I am a person who takes responsibility for my actions and deeds, just too easily with her when it is not really my fault. I stood up for myself occasionally, but not nearly enough. What I didn't know was that later she started setting up the circumstances for her to get the most out of the divorce. I wish I had found Reddit while all of this was happening. I didn't handle the divorce well. She purposely didn't work for the last year of the marriage and claimed mental incapacity to get the best she could in the settlement. That way her alimony could be maxed. We live in a no-fault state, so the affair made no difference. I have to pay her way too much, and although, as the accountant said, it is half of what living with her monthly was costing, it still hurts every month and takes away from my retirement and any savings. About 15 years into the marriage, we started sleeping in separate rooms and had separate landlines. She needed one for one of her imaginary businesses, as well as cell phones. One night a phone rang and I went into the living room to answer it. I get emergency calls. I picked up one of her landline phones on accident, sleepy and confused, and heard her and AP having phone SX. I was stunned and slowly put the phone back down. I went to my room and tried to think what to do. I could have burst into her room and confronted her, but then I decided to try to record the calls for proof. I didn't sleep that night or for many nights thereafter. I put a recorder on her line, but it would make a click when you picked up the receiver, so she started using her cell phone exclusively. At that time, I knew nothing about VARs, hidden cameras, or cell phone apps for tracking and listening. She heard the click on her landline and stopped using it and would only use her cell phone. A few days later, I went to use her Mac computer to try open a storage drive that wouldn't open on my PC. She had gone for a walk. When I lifted the lid, a naked picture of her popped up. I started looking, and she and AP were sending naked pictures back and forth. I had asked many times during the marriage to take a naked picture of her, and she flatly refused, saying that there would be no way she would allow that kind of picture to be taken of her. I took the laptop to work and downloaded the pictures and emails. When I got back home, I gave her the laptop. She thought she had misplaced somewhere. She was always losing keys due to her ADHD. I told her I found the pics. She became very angry and said I had invaded her privacy on the laptop I had purchased for her. She was going to get me for that. Then she asked if I had copied anything, and I played dumb and said I didn't know how to on a MacBook. She threatened that I should give her anything I had copied. When she calmed down, I asked how she could send those pics to someone when for years she had refused to allow me to take one. She said it was none of my business. I asked if she was having sex with AP, and she said yes. I said, so you are cheating on me, which you swore you would never do. She said she wasn't cheating. I asked what she called it, and she had no answer. I was mad and kept asking how she could send those pics via the internet, which could easily be pirated, after refusing me for so many years. She wouldn't answer. She then said I cheated first because I had been looking at porn after we had stopped having sex more than 2 years ago. I said that porn was not the same as PA. She said it was, so I asked her if we asked each of our parents which was worse, what they would think was worse. She didn't answer that. Eventually, she got up and left. I found out later she went to a neighbor's and told him I was threatening to be physically abusive. I wasn't, but I should have had a camera recording to help prove my innocence if it was to come up. She wanted me to leave the house, and I said no, I didn't do anything wrong. She went to a friend's and then rented a place to stay until we were divorced. I went into depression and couldn't eat or do anything but work and sleep and cry. When she saw me a couple of weeks later, she said I looked good because I had lost a lot of weight. We both had gained weight over the years. I never cared that she gained quite a bit of weight. I always told her she was beautiful, which she was to me, even though I constantly told her many times she would strut naked in front of me and ask if she was gorgeous, and I would say she was and compliment her profusely. She needed constant reassurance. She later apologized for the pics and asked me to forgive her and rubbed up close to me. It was very hard, but I did say maybe someday, but not now. She wasn't happy. She is narcissistic. A couple days later, she was mad and told me I ruined the relationship with AP when she told him I had the pics of him. He got mad and broke it off. I didn't care. She stuck me good for alimony. She had set up the situation with her lawyer, come to find out the only one that would work with her because everyone else refused because they thought she was crazy. I got to keep my business and had to refinance the house in my name. I also had to pay outstanding bills which were considerable and pay her lawyer. Now she can go find a sugar daddy if she can. I was probably one of the very few men who had the patience and naivete to be able to put up with her long term. She won't try to come back. She knows there is no way I would take her back. She saw once when I was picking up my daughter from the first marriage, the look on my face after meeting the ex's new fiancé. She later asked what I was thinking when I had turned away and was putting my daughter's suitcase in the vehicle. I told her I was thinking, you poor sucker, about the fiancé. I sent a letter to her parents outlining what she had done but thanking them for having been great in-laws. We liked each other and had always gotten along. I asked them to take care of her because she needed their support. She moved back to her parents several states away, and I have ghosted her except for having to pay the alimony. She originally had said she wanted the house, but then changed her mind. I asked why, and she said she was moving back to her parents because everyone in our town loved me because of my profession, and very few actually knew her. I told her that wasn't my fault. I made a lot of mistakes by not paying close enough attention to what my ex was doing, and I was too trusting. It has cost me, and I am still paying. Everyone should pay attention if their relationship seems to have changed for the worse, because you may get reamed like I did. Always get a prenup for both of the partners' sake. I am much better now. Not dating, but I have women friends that I see socially, and I am very happy doing what I want when I want. My psychiatrist at first thought I should date and pushed hard to get me to date, but now he says I'm the happiest he has seen me in years and keep doing what I'm doing.